contains graphic images. Viewer discretion is advised.
Domestic violence. Was it a motive for murder? That's what the prosecution leaned into in their case against O.J. Simpson. But in the end, the jury was unwilling to make that connection. I'm Michael Ayala. This is Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win?
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
None of us knew how big this would be.
Our decision was to go forward with the domestic violence evidence to establish that Simpson wasn't all that he appeared to be.
You just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line. It's going to be.
Wait a minute.
The last thing I told her is that I loved her.
We didn't know what Nicole was enduring.
He kind of jokingly just said, you know, to be honest, Shipp, I've had some dreams of killing her.
It came down to a stalker, and the stalker was Simpson.
The domestic abuse. To me, that was a waste of time. This was a murder trial, not domestic abuse.
You might say O.J. was an ass, a domestic abuser, but he was not a killer.
The last thing anybody thought about was two young people getting slaughtered in West LA in the middle of the night. That just seemed to be forgotten entirely.
Emergency. Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please.
Okay, what does he look like?
He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record.
Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever?
Yeah.
O.J. abused my sister dating back to 1978. So pretty much from day one. What kept her staying? What kept her to, stick this relationship out? I don't know.
She was raped on their first date. That she came back to the house and her pants were ripped off of her. Her zipper was broken. It's like, wait a minute, why would you go back to somebody who treats you like this?
When I was growing up, to me, he was just O.J. To me, he was just my sister's boyfriend.
College Football Highlights Player of the Year was Orenthal James Simpson of Southern California, perhaps the greatest running back of all time and winner of...
He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He was a football hero. He was a commentator. And there was something really endearing about the guy. He had a bigger-than-life personality.
Nicole didn't even know who O.J. was. All I know is that there was an immediate attraction when they met. And he said, I have business to attend to in Buffalo. But when I'm done, I'm going to come back for you.
Nicole Brown was 18 years old and working as a server at the Daisy, a restaurant in Beverly Hills, when they met.
She looked glamorous. She was beautiful. She was vibrant. She was full of life.
Well, he had met Nicole when she was just a waitress. Now, you want to remember that Nicole, she was very young, but she would tell you, I am Mrs. O.J. Simpson. I mean, they were very, they were very much in love.
Hi, Mama. How you doing?
Even though it was tumultuous and it was violent, but it wasn't always violent. And I want people to understand that Nicole didn't live 24 hours a day being assaulted. She had a great life in the interim, but when it was bad, it was bad.
O.J. and Nicole were married in 1985, and sometime during that year, they had a domestic dispute.
The police responded to the defendant's home in Rockingham in response to a call. And when they arrived, they were met by Nicole.
So the police were called, and the LAPD sent Mark Furman. What a small world.
We walked up, the gate was open. Simpson was to the left, leaning on another car with a baseball bat in his hand. And he had a look that was like he wasn't really here. Like a set jaw, dead stare.
I made some inquiries as when I first walked up as if they were the residents. Mr. Simpson responded saying that this was his house. And I asked the lady who broke the windshield, and she responded he did.
Nicole was sitting on the hood of her car. The windshield was shattered, and she was bawling to the point where her body was heaving.
And what was the defendant's demeanor at that time?
Well, he was agitated, but he wasn't out of control. He was just agitated.
Could you tell whether there was any physical injury to the body of the woman?
I couldn't tell, no.
And I said, do you want to make a report? She was still just out of control, crying. And she said, no. And the last thing I said to her, I said, well, okay, it's your life.
4 years later, Nicole called 911 during a fight with O.J. in the early morning hours on New Year's Day, 1989.
Hello?
The 1989 incident, it was the big eye-opener for me. It was the big, sad part of my life with OJ and Nicole.
She said, you never do anything about him. You come out, you've been out here 8 times, you never do anything about him.
The 89 domestic violence incident was significant because it generated a domestic violence report. After the murders, during the one time the investigators were able to question OJ, they questioned him about that incident.
I understand that she's made a couple of crime reports, annoying crime reports or something.
We had a big fight 5, 6 years ago on New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she made a report. I didn't make a report.
You arrested at one time for something?
No. I mean, 5 years ago we had a big fight.
You arrested her?
I know. I ended up doing community service.
So you arrested you?
No. I was never really arrested.
3 months after O.J. pleaded no contest to spousal battery, he was asked about the incident during an interview.
The day after this was over, we looked at each other. Hey, we had a fight. We were both guilty. No one was hurt. It was no big deal, and we got on with our life. As a matter of fact, after the Rose Bowl, we hosted a party for a great deal of amount of people, and mostly our friends. Took a trip with a couple of friends who never even knew we had an argument that night. And then 30 days later, I'm reading in the paper this major thing had happened. Quoting things that people say to one another in the middle of an argument.
The extent of the abuse became clear after the murders, when Nicole's family found her diaries.
There were so many incidences in those notes and diaries of vacations that our whole family was on. Of incidences where they would be verbally fighting and arguing, and in such flippant ways that she would turn around and say, he's going to kill me, and let's go shopping. You just think, this could never happen.
However, it seems that Nicole thought this was going to happen. After she was killed, investigators opened up her safe deposit box, and in it, what they found was chilling. They found pictures of her face being badly injured, and they found apology letters from OJ.
Nicole, let me start by expressing how wrong I was for hurting you. There is no excuse for what I did. I've never been more disappointed in myself than I am now.
One of the other stunning things was a newspaper clipping from that 1989 fight that she had with OJ. All of these things taken together, painting a picture, a terrible, scary picture of what Nicole Brown Simpson's life was really like with him.
You're going to be hearing evidence regarding domestic abuse, domestic violence,
stalking. He killed Nicole for a single reason, not because he hated her. He didn't hate Nicole. What this defendant had for Nicole Brown wasn't love, it was obsession.
Our decision was to go forward with the domestic violence evidence to establish that Simpson wasn't all that he appeared to be as a public icon.
This was 1994. And in 1994, for a lot of people, the idea of domestic abuse, that was not the same thing as murder. These are different. And then, in fact, the defense was making the argument that they're actually separate.
Evidence in this case, we believe, will show that O.J. Simpson is an innocent man, wrongfully accused. He's not charged with any domestic violence. This is a murder case. And in their pursuit to win, they're trying to dredge up some theory to give you a motive, because they don't have a motive. But Mr. Simpson is not proud at all of the fact that he and his wife got into an altercation and she was struck on January 1st, 1989. He's not proud of that. From that day forward to the present date, there's no evidence that O.J. Simpson ever struck his wife again.
Still ahead on Trial and Error.
A whole fight broke out and pictures started flying off the walls. She ended up falling. She ended up on her elbows and on her butt.
Nicole's sister breaks down on the witness stand.
She was a little too animated for me. She did things that, came across as I'm acting.
Also, one of O.J.'s friends breaks ranks and testifies against him.
As I was just walking through the door of the courtroom, I actually really felt my legs shaking.
Do that.
State and spell your first and last name for the record.
Denise Brown, DENISE-BROWN.
Prosecutors in the case against O.J. Simpson used Nicole's sister Denise to lay out their case of domestic violence against O.J. as a motive for the murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. Denise had a unique perspective because over the years, she was the one that Nicole confided in about the abuse.
She would say, he's going to kill me one day. He's going to get away with it. Let's go shopping. Let's go to lunch. Let's go someplace. Let's do something. But it was never like a serious conversation of, Denise, this is what's happening in my life.
You know the defendant seated here at the end of the counsel table?
Yes, I do.
Is your former brother-in-law?
Yes, he is.
If Nicole really had a challenge, I don't know if she would call any of her friends. I think she would call Denise.
We were so close. And we did so many things together. I mean, even friends of ours when we were younger, they'd say, oh, you get mad at one? They're both mad at you.
Prosecutor Christopher Darden wasted no time in his questioning of Denise Brown, moving quickly to the first time she met O.J. in 1977 at a Buffalo Bills football game.
You returned to the defendant's home after the game, correct?
Yes.
Anything unusual happened then?
Yeah, O.J. got real upset. And he started screaming at Nicole.
Let me see counsel decide that, please.
The judge had already made a lot of pretrial rulings about certain evidence coming in and certain evidence staying out. Denise actually started talking about things that the judge had already said, you're not allowed to talk about this. So she went rogue.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are to disregard. I am striking from the record the last question and answer. You are to disregard that, treat it as though you had never heard it. Mr. Darden.
Hey, Ms. Brown, we're not going to talk about anything that occurred between 1977 and December 31, 1984. Understand that?
Okay. Sure.
Denise Brown, Nicole's sister, was able to establish that she had witnessed O.J. Simpson hit or strike Nicole in the past. She painted a picture of Nicole that you really had nobody speaking for the victim other than Denise.
O.J. grabbed Nicole's crotch and said, this is where babies come from, and this belongs to me. And Nicole just sort of wrote it off like it was nothing, like she was used to that kind of treatment. And it was like, I thought it was really humiliating, if you ask me.
Did the defendant appear mad or angry or upset when he grabbed his sister's crotch and made these statements in front of these strangers?
No, he wasn't angry.
And during the time that these strangers were approaching him, did he appear to shy away from the attention at all?
Oh, no, not at all. He loves the attention. He loves it. He's got a big ego. It feeds his ego.
On paper, Denise Brown should have been the perfect witness, but on the stand, I think they failed to prepare her adequately.
Ms. Brown, if I can ask you, would you please listen carefully to the question that the attorneys asked of you, and if you would answer just the precise question that they ask you, this will go a lot easier.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Haywood Galbraith, a photojournalist for the Los Angeles Sentinel, attended every day of the trial. He had a different impression of Denise Brown on the witness stand.
Friday was the big day to give the jury something to think about over the weekend. Denise Brown was on the witness stand, and I looked at Denise, and I said, this is what's gonna happen. When it's close to time for court to be over today, Denise is gonna get asked a question, and she's gonna break down and start crying.
What reaction, if any, was there by the defendant when you told him that he took your sister, Nicole, for granted?
He got extremely upset. Grabbed Nicole, told her to get out of his house, wanted us all out of his house. Picked her up, threw her against a wall. Picked her up, threw her out of the house. She ended up on her. She ended up falling. She ended up on her elbows and on her butt.
Your Honor, if it pleases the court, can we adjourn and continue this Monday morning?
A juror who was dismissed during the trial was interviewed by a Los Angeles TV station and said she wasn't impressed with Denise Brown's testimony.
She was a little too animated for me. You know, I can understand a person being upset, having suffered a loss, but she did things that, you know, came across as I'm acting. She would hold her cross and, you know, she would cry and, you know, she was a little too animated for me.
Denise Brown's testimony was also a problem for the prosecution, not because of what she said, but because of mistakes made by Christopher Darden.
Trial prep is everything in a case like this. If you're going to bring in a piece of evidence, you have to know where it came from. It's called foundation. What Darden did was try to he introduced a piece of evidence that had no foundation. There were 3 photos left behind in a safe deposit box. 2 of those photos Denise took, hence they had foundation. The 3rd photo, nobody knew where it came from. It was something that Nicole left, but Chris actually put it up anyway, without foundation.
For the prosecutor to come to court and flash a photograph without knowing what that witness was going to say about the photograph and telling Your Honor that we haven't asked her. I guess she's going to say they were 1985. I don't know what she'll say. I have to ask her. Is something that is not permitted by our rules of procedure.
You can look at the photographs and clearly discern that she is younger in People's 9 for identification. If they wanted to object to the introduction of these photographs, they could have.
Judge Ito ruled the black eye photo inadmissible and admonished the jury to disregard it.
I know it's difficult to unring a bell, but I'm going to ask you to disregard what you saw in that particular photograph. The reason for that is there is no foundation. We don't know the date, time, and place where that was taken, by whom, and what it purports to depict.
When a judge has to tell the jurors to disregard a portion of the evidence presented by the prosecution, it creates a confusion, it creates a mistrust.
It was utter incompetence, malpractice. We didn't win the O.J. Simpson case. The prosecution lost it.
Up next, Ron Shipp lays bare the reality of his friendship with O.J. Simpson.
I was like a servant to him. Like, I did not mind doing anything I did for O.J. because I idolized him.
As he accepts a bitter truth about his former friend.
She had all these pictures, and she goes, well, this is what's happened to me in the past. And I looked at those pictures, and I went, Whoa.
And later, Nicole Brown's plea for help made just months before her death.
Has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you?
You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to come in again.
Okay, just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat it out.
Wait a minute.
An Iowa man is found unconscious after crashing his car. He asked police to check on his girlfriend, recalling flashes of violence. Now he's on trial for her brutal murder.
The Visions of Violence murder trial begins Monday morning on Court TV.
Ron Shipp was a former LAPD officer and longtime friend of O.J. and Nicole, and found himself in the role of star witness for the prosecution because he had a front row seat to Nicole and O.J.'s turbulent relationship.
As I was just walking through the door of the courtroom, I actually really felt my legs shaking. It was really weird.
People call Ron Shipp to the standing guard.
Mr. Shipp.
Chris Darden had been recruiting me pretty much, saying, hey, you know, you need to help us out. You need to testify. I told him I didn't want anything to do with it. And he called me down to the district attorney's office. So I sat down and someone said, hey, Chris, you got a phone call. And he's went, oh, okay. And he gets up and he walks away. And I look and I sit there and I see this what I knew was a homicide book, you know, and Ron and Nicole. And I just opened it up. And I looked at the pictures of Ron, and I looked at pictures of Nicole, and when I saw the picture of her, I mean, that just ripped me to shreds. When Chris came back, you know, and I just looked at him and said, you know, I'll testify. And he goes, huh? I said, I'll testify, man. I'll testify.
Did you consider Nicole Brown a friend?
Yes, I did.
As you did the defendant?
Yes, I did.
And do you and the defendant remain friends today?
Well, I still love the guy, but I don't know. I mean, this is a weird situation I'm sitting here in.
Now that was a really weird moment. O.J. looked at me and smiled. And then I swear, it was like something just went, like hit me right there. And I went, whoa. But he actually smiled like the old days.
Is that a photograph of you and the defendant there?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and that's you smiling there?
Yes.
Were you shooting a scene at that particular time?
No, we weren't.
What was going on in this photograph?
Someone blew a line or something like that, and OJ, we thought it was funny. And that's when he hugged me.
Ron Shipp, because of his relationship with both Nicole and O.J., was a very impactful and very credible witness for the prosecution. He came across as believable, starting with the fight between O.J. and Nicole on New Year's Day.
She just kind of got into actually what had happened and started telling me what had happened between her and O.J.
What injuries did you see at that time?
I couldn't see it that well because I remember she had makeup on, but if I remember, there was some swelling about her head somewhere. But I remember it was covered up pretty good.
O.J., you know, had slapped her and chased her around, and she, you know, ended up outside with it only with her bra on. And I think I told her, I said, Nicole, I said, when I was talking to O.J. on the phone, he said he was trying to hold you off. He said you were the aggressor. And it was an isolated incident. And that's when she looked at me and she said, you know, he said, isolated? And she had all these pictures. And she goes, well, this is what's happened to me in the past. And I looked at those pictures and I went, whoa, you know? And the first thing, of course, was going through my mind that, you know, I'm like, man, you know, OJ's a batterer, you know? I'm like, at that point when I saw those photos, this can't be the guy that I admire, the guy that never seen mad. I felt so bad, and as we were talking, she started crying. You know, I've never seen Nicole cry.
Were you ever assigned to teach any particular subject at the police academy?
Yes, I was.
And what was that subject?
Domestic violence.
Did you show her the profile of the battered woman?
Yes, I did.
The victim's profile?
Yes, I did.
Did you discuss it with her?
Yes, I did.
And I went over all the the profiles and, of the victim, the batterer. And she looked at the what I was showing her. She goes, that's him, that's him, that's him, that's him. And I went, oh, man, And she goes, could you do me a favor and maybe, go over these profiles with OJ? And I said, sure.
OJ made a remark to me. He said that he didn't think that he was a batterer. And I explained to him, I said, hey, man, you hit her. She's got marks. You're a batterer.
The thing about Ron Shipp is that he was credible. He was real. Ron Shipp was there right after the murders. He told the jury about this changing story that OJ had for how he cut his finger.
I asked him how he cut his finger.
And what did he say?
Say he did it in Chicago.
He said he smashed a glass in Chicago and cut his finger. And then I said, oh, okay. And then after that, somebody else had asked him, OJ, what happened to your finger? And he said, well, I was chipping golf balls out in the front yard and cut my finger. Then another guy came by and asked, OJ, what happened to your finger? And he said, I was getting the cell phone out of the Bronco.
Ron Shipp also told the jurors about that bizarre story recounted to him by OJ after the murders, where OJ claims he had a dream that he killed Nicole.
He kind of jokingly just said, to be honest, Shipp, that's what he called me, Shipp. He said, I've had some dreams of killing her.
Did he say how many dreams he'd had of killing her?
No, he did not.
Did he say it was more than one?
He just said dreams, plural.
I talked to him at Rockingham. I got in the car when I left, and I drove home crying. And I called my wife. First thing I did, I called my wife and told her, I said, Nina, I think OJ killed her. And she goes, you're kidding me? I said, no, I think he did it. And it was a real sad moment, for me. I mean, because this guy was everything to me. I mean, everything.
Up next, OJ's dream team misses the mark in their cross-examination of Ron Shipp.
Didn't you think, sir, that by concocting this story about Mr. Simpson, it might enhance your own personal profile?
Since Nicole's been dead, I've felt nothing but guilt. My own personal guilt that I didn't do as much as I probably should have.
Plus, was O.J. Simpson stalking Nicole?
It wasn't domestic violence. They didn't have a domestic relationship. They were divorced. It came down to a stalker, and the stalker was Simpson.
They were broken up, and he was still madly in love with her. And he was coming to her house and doing all of these things. And one of these times he came and he saw her intimately involved with another man.
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The Celebrity Stylist Murder Trial. Weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
OJ's contention is that he never said to Ron Shipp anything about having dreams about killing his wife.
Did you take him to the bedroom?
That he was never present alone with Ron Shipp in the bedroom.
Carl Douglas, a lesser-known member of the defense team, was assigned to cross-examine Ron Shipp, but things did not go as planned.
Wouldn't you agree that this statement about this supposed dream is a pretty bad thing about Mr. Simpson?
Yes, it is.
So did you lie when you didn't tell me about that dream?
I sure did.
You did? You've lied a few times, haven't you, sir?
Never in court.
Carl had a lot of important jobs. Johnny had originally given Carl and I both a number of witnesses to examine at the trial. And one of Carl's witnesses came first, which was Ron Shipp.
Your Honor.
And that was a particularly awful day for the defense.
Didn't you think, sir, that by concocting this story about Mr. Simpson, it might enhance your own personal profile?
Mr. Douglas, I put all my faith in God and my conscience. Since Nicole's been dead, I've felt nothing but guilt, my own personal guilt, that I didn't do as much as I probably should have.
You do realize, Mr. Shipp, that by testifying as you have, you are going to enhance the name of Ron Shipp around the world.
Just like you're enhancing Carl Douglas by being Mr. Attorney here.
You realize that too, right?
Yes, I do.
So now you're a star as well.
Well, I mean, that's what everybody's, that's what they say. People are going to see you. But that's not why I'm doing this, Mr. Douglas. I'm doing this for my conscience and my peace of mind. I would not have the blood of Nicole on Ron Shipp.
I hated Carl Douglas for a long time. I really did. The word hate in my mind was Carl Douglas.
You're not really this man's friend, are you, sir?
Well, okay, all right. If you want me to really explain it, I guess you can say I was like everybody else, one of his servants. I did police stuff for him all the time. I ran license plates. That's what I was. Okay, I mean, like I said, I love the guy.
Isn't it true, sir, that you mentioned to Mr. Simpson that the police had found a glove on his property?
I had no idea what they found in that house. Nothing.
Didn't you take Mr. Simpson out to behind the garage to show him the area where the glove was supposedly found?
This is sad, OJ, but no, this is really sad.
Your Honor, I move to strike that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are to disregard Mr. Shipp's direct comment to the defendant. Mr. Shipp, please, you're instructed not to do that.
Ron Shipp just looked over at OJ at one point and just started talking directly to him as if no one else was in the room. It was just this very real moment, and that was on Carl's watch. And it wasn't Carl's fault, but it caused OJ to insist that the second-tier lawyers not get to examine any other witnesses.
The defense team went after Ron Shipp big time, and they used members of OJ's family to do it, including his mother, who got up on the stand and testified that Ron was at Rockingham and drinking after the murders occurred.
Do you remember seeing Ron Shipp there?
Yes.
When you saw him, what was he doing, if anything?
He was sitting at the bar.
Was he doing anything at the bar while sitting there?
Yes.
What was that?
Yeah, he was having a drink.
Did you see him drink anything at the bar?
He had a can in his hand.
You know what kind of can it was?
Appeared to be a beer can. He appeared to be space.
What was that word again?
Well,
Space, did you say?
I would say space.
All right, what do you
He
mean
didn't
by...
appear natural.
Carl Douglas asked me about being a drunk and drinking and stuff like that. I had a drinking suspension with the LAPD, where I got suspended for 15 days.
You drink a lot, don't you?
I used to.
You've had a drinking problem, haven't you?
In the past, I have.
Your alcohol problem started when?
When I was a police officer.
Wasn't there occasion, sir, when you came to the academy with alcohol in your breath?
Yes, there was.
Didn't you receive a discipline as a result of that conduct?
Yes, I did.
What was that discipline?
I received 15 days suspension.
So this is what they're gonna do. And they're gonna rip me up. And I was sitting there going, wow, so they're gonna, go after, my character.
So it wasn't just the drinking that the defense team used to attack Ron Shipp. They also went after the fact that OJ's family members said that he was never alone with OJ. So this story, where Ron Shipp says that OJ told him he had this dream about killing Nicole, would have been heard by one of OJ's family members.
Did you ever see Ron Shipp up in your brother's bedroom?
Yes, I did.
Was anyone else up there when he was there?
Yes, my sister.
Who else was there?
Sorry, my sister Shirley.
And yourself?
Yes.
And your brother?
Yes.
And for how long a period of time was Mr. Shipp there?
A couple of minutes.
To your knowledge, was your brother ever alone with Mr. Shipp?
No, sir.
OJ had just closed his eyes for a moment, and when the telephone rung, OJ started to shake. And I asked Ron, I said, Ron, is there any way that you can turn that phone off or unplug the phone? He walked around the side of the bed and he unplugged the phone.
Are you absolutely certain that you can tell this jury that at no time other than regarding unplugging the telephone, was there any private conversation between Mr. Shipp and your brother?
I'm absolutely sure.
Up next, O.J. Simpson, the stalker.
He did this to her several times, stalking her at night when she had male guests or she was with somebody.
He was horribly jealous, and even still today, people still misconstrue jealousy as love, and jealousy is not love.
And what did the jurors think of the state's motive evidence?
Domestic abuse. To me, that was a waste of time. This was a murder trial, not domestic abuse.
For TV.
In the case against O.J. Simpson, the prosecution had two potential motives. One, the domestic violence between O.J. and Nicole. The other was stalking, which some believe the prosecution didn't emphasize enough. The clearest example of stalking was O.J. peering into Nicole's living room window, watching her with another man.
There was a time period in O.J.'s life when, by all accounts, even O.J.'s and everyone else's, they were broken up and he was still madly in love with her. And he was trying to, and coming to her house and doing all of these things. And one of these times he came and he saw her intimately involved with another man.
She began dating a man named Keith. Keith Zalomzowicz. There was one evening, it was about 3 in the morning. And they were seated on the sofa in their living room. The kids were upstairs asleep, and Keith and Nicole made love on the couch. But they weren't alone. There was someone watching through the window. It was the defendant.
O.J. is stalking Nicole. He's peering in her window and actually witnesses her getting busy with one of her lovers. He shows up the next day and confronts her. That confrontation becomes the subject of a 911 call.
911 emergency.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please.
Okay, what does he look like?
He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record.
Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you?
You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to come in again.
Okay, just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat.
Wait a minute.
These recordings of her and her telling people that she was afraid, almost like she was speaking from the grave. I found that to be really, really impactful and really, really sad and haunting.
He's still yelling at you? Is he upset with something that you did?
A long time ago, it always comes back.
Keith Zalomzowicz told the grand jury about several different episodes while he was dating Nicole, including one at a restaurant where he said O.J. confronted him and Nicole, saying, "I'm O.J. Simpson and she's still my wife." Zalomzowicz also testified that O.J. showed up while he and Nicole were in Nicole's bedroom. Keith was sitting on her back and massaging her neck, and O.J. sat right next to them and said, "I can't believe it. Look at what you're doing."
Despite the horror stories that he told the grand jury, the state decided not to call Keith Zalomzowicz as a witness. It's actually surprising because anytime you could have brought somebody in to say that O.J. was a stalker, that could have made a huge difference for the jury.
That was a push by Marcia Clark. He did this to her several times, stalking her at night when she had male guests or she was with somebody. It came down to a stalker, and the stalker was Simpson.
Nicole Brown's home was directly next door to yours during April of 1992. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What caused you to call 911?
I happened to look outside and I saw a man outside on the sidewalk. He was standing on the sidewalk looking at what apparently was the residence next door. After I'd made the call, I recognized him.
And who was that man?
It was Mr. Simpson.
The prosecution had plenty of evidence of stalking and domestic violence. They saw repeated patterns. And we can second guess how they handled it all we want, but things were different back then. And they just didn't take it as seriously as we would take it now.
We didn't know what domestic violence was. We didn't know what Nicole was enduring. He probably felt that he was losing her and he went crazy. He was horribly jealous. And even still today, people still misconstrue jealousy as love. And jealousy is not love. Jealousy is checking up on you.
I harbored a lot of anger towards Denise Brown and Nicole's other family members and friends because I didn't think that they did enough to protect her. I think I was ignorant in that and naive in that regard. And so I can't imagine what it is like to be a family member or a friend or someone that feels so connected to you and feels so helpless.
The evidence that you can't deny is the evidence of the domestic battery. It's a very clear-cut case. This actually happened. This is his relationship with this woman. You can't argue with that.
The abuse may be clear now, but at the time, it wasn't. When asked about it publicly, O.J. brushed it off and claimed he was being targeted because of his fame.
Hey, we just tried to put it behind us and ignore it as much as we could. We could have easily gone to court and been on the stand, and I think even the city attorney's office realized that they couldn't have won it, but that wasn't the point of filing. The point was to bring attention to a new law that's on the book, and who better do that than me? And I just said, why me? Why am I the guy that you choose to do this? I don't think I'm a good example, and I don't think this incident this night was a good example of what you guys are trying to, bring to light.
I don't get the sense that O.J. Simpson ever wanted to let her go, and I think that she lived a great deal of her life in fear. I think she was fearful of having other relationships because she was fearful about what O.J. Simpson would do.
So while this in some ways was the cornerstone of the state's case, they didn't use all the evidence to their best advantage. They excluded some, they limited others, they minimized some of it as well. Imagine if they had focused and stretched out each piece of that evidence and then started layering them one after the other, where you could finally have said, wasn't this inevitable? They never got there.
It was very startling to us when a couple months into the trial and after the presentation of the domestic violence evidence that several jurors were all discharged and various of them granted interviews.
The domestic violence situation in itself, I don't believe that a person, just because, say he was guilty of physical abuse, that doesn't make him guilty of murder.
The domestic abuse. To me, that was a waste of time. This was a murder trial, not domestic abuse. If you want to get tried for domestic abuse, go in another courtroom and get tried for that.
They felt it had nothing to do with the murders. Our feeling was it had everything to do with the murders.
You might say O.J. was an ass, a domestic abuser, and not the hero that we thought he was. But he was not a killer.
While the jury didn't buy the connection between domestic violence and the murders in the case against O.J. Simpson, the trial did put a spotlight on the issue, increasing awareness and support for victims of abuse. I'm Michael Ayala. Thanks for watching this episode of Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win?
Two people viciously attacked, numerous stab wounds.
He's a killer, that's what he is. He's not my friend.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.